Good evening. Call to order the City of Cedar Falls Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Wednesday, October 24th, 2018. And Ms. Lehman, if we could have the roll call, please.
Thank you. Adkins?
Here.
Arntzen?
Here.
Jeruso?
Here.
Hartley? Not here. Holtz?
Here.
Here. Lieber? Not here. Oberly?
Here.
Saul?
Here.
And Wingert.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. At this point, we'll open the microphone podium for any general public comments anyone would like to make to the commission. Seeing none, we'll move into our first item of new business. This is the Central Business District Design Review for LBL sign. And staff, if you would go ahead and introduce this item for us, please.
Thank you. So the tenant of 321 Main Street has installed a sequin wall panel on the top half of their storefront facade to act as a sign band behind the existing wall sign. The property is located in the Central Business District, and within the overlay, this type of change does require review and approval by Planning and Zoning and City Council. So that's why we have it on our agenda today. The sign was installed without proper permits or without following the steps for approval. And upon contact from staff, the owner and tenant did submit the application for review to address the violation. So here are the images of the site as it was, and then as a site as it is now. The wall panel was mounted over the existing painted wood wall panel with screws, so it can be easily removed and it does not damage the integrity of the building. As it is a substantial improvement in the overlay, it does have to go through the design review criteria. So these are the criteria that are entailed in that review. So of those design elements, two elements are really applicable in this case, so they're outlined here in red: materials and texture as well as color. Just a note that the improvement covers the sign band located behind the wall sign of the building, so that is why it's not considered a sign, so it's not triggering the signage review of this process. Just like to note that this improvement is unique and really the first of its type in the district for this type of material, as the code does not directly address the type of material that has been used. So we'll set a precedent for future cases moving forward. The wall panel that was installed consists of silver sequins made out of a composite material. To add visual interest, the sequins are mounted so that they dangle from the panel so that they're continuously moving and sparkling as the wind hits it to draw some extra visual attraction there. The material section of the code does note that you should consider surrounding properties, their textures and materials to what is being proposed. So of the neighboring properties and even in the district, there are no buildings that use this type of material. Conversely, sign bands and signs are intended to be unique and draw attention to a storefront. So it's not unusual to see creative approaches to create visual interest in this area of the facade. Staff feels that by using a unique material on the sign band should not in itself warrant grounds for denial, unless there's evidence that the material itself will deteriorate quickly, that it would damage the facade of the building, and that it would be the predominant material used on that facade. So of those three concerns, this mounted panel does not trigger any of those. So we feel that the proposal is not counter to the primary intent of this section. Looking at the color, the Central Business District guideline states that primarily neutral or earth tone colors should be used on a storefront. However, it does allow for up to 15% of other colors, so to allow for accents on a building. So with the area that's covered, about 12.5%, it would be covered with these sequins, and that combined with the purple area there on the right side would be just under 15%. So in terms of color, it does meet the design standards for that. So So staff recommends approval of the submitted sign band for 321 Main Street, but again, noting that this is unique for the district, so I do encourage discussion from the commission. And then also just as informational, we have not gotten any complaints from the public on this item, and we have heard from the tenant, who's unfortunately not able to be with us here today, that she has gotten a lot of compliments from.
Iris, you want to know the correspondence received? We just received a correspondence.
Oh, we just received an email. Oh,
That was the late handout that I just handed out when I came in after the meeting started. We received, Deb received an email, and so it's related to this case, and the person that sent the email noted it was a complaint.
So
till now, we have not gotten a complaint on the sign.
our normal process is to invite the applicant at this time to make any statements and understand that individual's not here this evening.
Correct.
We will open it up if there's any other public comment on this item. Invite you to come forward. I see none. Commission, questions for staff, discussion?
I just note that I got the same email that doesn't approve of the change, doesn't think it's a good thing. It's a little unusual. I'm not sure though that the worst thing in the world either. So I'm kind of conflicted on it a little bit. Not sure where to take it.
I like it. It adds some excitement. I think with all the buildings that we have down there, still historical in nature and architecture, and a lot of it are neutral. And to me, it's a neutral color. It's silver and black. I know it catches the sunlight and everything, but that adds to the excitement of our downtown too.
So Iris, if this was coming through and it wasn't already installed, what would the staff have to say about that material?
We wrote it in a way where we would consider it the same way, so it didn't impact our report. The only thing that I did is I added that note in the beginning just as background information, but it doesn't impact our stance on this case.
All right.
I would move to approve.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Please go ahead and vote. All ayes on that one, so that item is approved, and we'll move on to City Council. Our second item of new business is the Highway 1 site plan amendment for Raising Cane's signage. And Jane, thank you.
Okay, this is a request for Highway 1 District Site Plan Amendment for Raising Cane's. This is located at the southeast corner of Viking Road and Highway 58. If the commission remembers, the commission reviewed a site plan back in July for this new restaurant. And that went on to City Council in August and was approved for construction. However, at the time when they submitted their site plan, they did not show any sort of freestanding signage. The original plan was to have some wall signage, and then also to add a sign at the main entrance where Target has a multi-tenant monument sign. They did plan to just have a small sign there and on the wall signage. They've since made some changes to that. They're not going to locate on the main monument sign at the entrance there. They're still going to have some wall signage, but now they would like to have a freestanding monument sign because it's a change to the site plan, but by now showing a freestanding sign, we are deeming that a major change that needs to go back through the commission and council for approval. So this slide's just showing where the monument sign's going to go. It's going to go on the northeast corner of the property, just north of the parking lot. It'll be outside of all of the setback and vision triangle. So it appears to be in an appropriate location. Here's the sign design. So on the left is their rendering, and then on the right is an actual picture from another location. So it's only a 6-foot tall sign with a brick base. It won't have any message board or anything. It's basically just the company logo on top of that small brick base. So because it meets the location and size requirements, staff is recommending approval of the amended plan to show that freestanding sign.
Invite any comments from an applicant? Invite any public comments on this one? Commission, questions or discussion?
It meets all of our standard sign requirements, so yeah, I would move to approve.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Please go ahead and vote. We have all eyes on that one also, so that is also approved, and we'll move on to City Council. Next, we move to old business. Our first item is the Ridge Estates Preliminary Plat. Staff, update us again on this one.
So we talked about this last time, that they had asked for a deferral till the next meeting, and they're still working on some of the stormwater management. It's a challenging site, so they'd request to defer until the next meeting. And we notified all the neighbors of that deferral, and we'll notify them again when it's on the agenda.
Thank you. Our second item of old business then is the Highway 1 District Site Plan Review for the Fleet Farm Retail and Convenience Store.
Okay, so this was on the commission's agenda back on October 10th for introduction and comment. I'll just kind of go through some of the details fairly quick, since the commission's already been introduced to this. So this is located at the southwest corner of East Ridgeway, or West Ridgeway Avenue and Highway 58. It's about 50 acres. It's currently zoned A1, but again, they're going through the rezoning process. That was approved through the second reading at City Council, and the third and final reading will be occurring on that rezoning on November 5th. So again, staff is looking at this site as if it's already zoned Highway 1 for site planning purposes. Again, so the site plan is kind of broken down into these next two slides, the north and south half. Again, they're showing a main retail store along the west side of the property with 3 future retail stores just to the north of that. And then the convenience store at the northeast corner of the property with 2 future buildable lots south of the convenience store. Again, on this slide, there's some wetland area kind of between the Ridgeway Avenue and where their building site. They're, for the most part, going to stay out of the wetlands other than their access drives, and so they're leaving that area open at this time. Again, on this slide, they're showing 2 different detention basins. There's one more detention basin, which will be on the next slide. And so this is the south half of the property where you can see the main retail store for the Fleet Farm store with their yard area to the south of that. Parking, main parking lot to the east of the store, and then stormwater detention basin 3 east of the parking lot. Again, this is a conceptual drawing of the entire site where you can see the Fleet Farm store on the west side with those 3 future retail buildings, the convenience store at the northeast corner with the future outlots just to the south of that. These are some aerial renderings of the property. There was one change on the picture on the bottom right. I think the original overhead image didn't show any landscaping around the convenience store, so the applicant did go ahead and put in, there will be landscaping. I think that was one of the questions from the commission at the last meeting is, was there any landscaping around the convenience store? So the landscaping plan does show it, and they just wanted to add it to these renderings that there is going to be landscaping around the convenience store as well. Again, so the landscaping plan, they're required to have a certain amount of street trees along the street frontages, parking lot trees within the parking areas, and then perimeter trees around the parking areas. Again, they're going to have a total of 541 trees and over 500 shrubs. And then based on our point system, how it rates for, depending on the size of the tree, they're required to have 35,000 points, and they're showing about a little over 56,000 points. So they're over their required minimums for landscaping points. And as far as open space, the Highway 20 Overlay District requires 15% open space, and they're providing 33% of their site as open space. So it does appear to meet the landscaping and open space requirements. Again, their signage plan, they're showing 3 signs, one along Highway 20, one on the convenience store property, and then one at their entrance at Nordic Drive and Ridgeway Avenue. Again, they're meeting all the requirements of the signage ordinance as far as size, number, and square footage. Again, with the stormwater management plan, again, as I indicated earlier, there's 3 detention basins. The image on the left shows the 2 basins towards the north end of the property. The convenience store and some of the northern areas of the parking lot will drain to these detention basins, and then will release into the drainage ditch along Ridgeway Avenue. And then the image on the right is the detention basin, which will be located east of the parking lot and east of the main Fleet Farm store. That'll get a lot of the water from the parking lot and then direct that east to the ditch along Highway 58. Building design, these images are the main Fleet Farm store. The building materials are using textured concrete precast panels, 2 different colors of gray, and then they're going to have a white metal perforated panel above the main entrance with some aged cedar wood and some of the Fleet Farm orange phenolic panels. The convenience store, again, they're using those same precast panels and same the Fleet Farm orange coloring on the sides. One of the comments that was made at the last meeting was the design on the north-facing wall, which was facing West Ridgeway Avenue. We wanted to see, just to see if we could up the design a little bit on that north facing, because it faces a major streetway. So they did propose some steel trellis adding along that south facade to add articulation and interest there. So you can kind of see, I circled it in 2 different renderings. The one is kind of a further away rendering, and then pointing to kind of more of a close-up of what that would be. Again, when the rezoning went through the P&Z Commission and making its way through council, there was the conditional zoning agreement. Again, there's 5 different conditions that the commission recommended approval of the rezoning with. I went through these briefly at the last meeting, and again, I can go run through them quick again. One being that the street intersection traffic control improvements need to be addressed. At the last meeting, we were still working with the applicant on what those final roadway design would be. We do have a preliminary design that was submitted showing those roadway improvements, and I'll get to that in just a second. The city's generally been in agreement with the applicant on what those roadway design improvements will be. And then the timing of the construction of those will be spelled out in a development agreement that we are currently working on drafting between the city and the applicant. That'll spell out when it's going to happen. There's going to be potentially a couple different phases and when that occurs. So, and I'll get to that in just a second. Again, they're showing that future area of right-of-way at the southeast corner in case the DOT puts in that interchange, as I've mentioned before. Number 3 is if that property to the west ever develops, that they show that 30-foot wide access easement. Again, they were showing that on the site plan that they provided. Number 4, that they provide a 5-foot sidewalk along the entire frontage of the property along West Ridgeway Avenue. So the site plan does show that sidewalk along their entire street frontage. However, and it was indicated a couple weeks ago that between Nordic Drive and Highway 58, that sidewalk appears to be real close to Ridgeway Avenue. We're still working with the developer on designing that. Most likely because of the traffic improvements, there might need to be additional right-of-way that's needed for an extra turn lane or 2. And so we're going to keep working with the developer on the location of that sidewalk that might have to move depending on what the needs are for the roadway improvements. But that will need to be connected to Highway 58. And again, we mentioned it, that's important for the city to have that connection because there is that existing trail system to the east there that we would like to see that connection on. And then the last condition was that sidewalks be installed throughout the interior of the site to provide connectivity from each of the businesses. So again, the site plan shows those interior sidewalks that lead from the main retail building to the future retail buildings to the north, and then also to the convenience store. Again, it was indicated in the staff report, but we would like to see a future sidewalk segment be shown on the site plan for those two future outlots, just so that is shown and known for a future developer or future owner of those lots that sidewalk connection needs to be made. All right, so this slide shows the proposed public roadway improvements at full build-out. So the traffic study that they provided shows a couple different scenarios. One, the traffic improvements that are needed when the property opens, when they want to open, and then another one typically looks out about 20 years. So what they call it is the 2040 full build-out. So these improvements are for their full build-out as if their development was fully constructed with all their future retail buildings and future outlots. So again, they're showing a roundabout at what would be site drive number 1 along near the west side of their property. They're showing a signalized intersection at site drive number 2, which would be Nordic Drive, with some additional turn lanes being added to get traffic either onto their site and a turn lane to get up to on the north side of Nordic Drive. And then additional turn lanes at West Ridgeway Avenue and Highway 58. So again, what we're looking at is potential phasing, working with the developer on how this could be phased. I think right now the roundabout and then the signals at Nordic would be a phase 1, where that would be done upon opening of their store, and then the extra lane improvements at 58 in Ridgeway would probably be another year or two down the road. The traffic study kind of indicated that those are future needs, so those wouldn't be necessary to open the store now to have those additional turn lanes. So the Community Development Department reviewed the plan and does recommend approval of the site plan, subject to approval of a development agreement. Again, that details what those public improvements are that are necessary along the adjacent roadway to safely and efficiently accommodate the traffic that are generated by the proposed development at full build-out, and outlining the timeline and responsibility for the construction of those improvements. Again, we're still working on that development agreement, which will go to City Council that kind of spells some of that stuff out. But in general, what we want to see in the development agreement for those improvements include, again, the construction of the roundabout on West Ridgeway Avenue at the intersection of Site Drive number 1, construction of that signalized intersection at the intersection of West Ridgeway Avenue and Site Drive number 2, which is at Nordic Drive, additional turn lanes and improvements at the intersection of Highway 58 and West Ridgeway Avenue. And then again, a public sidewalk that's constructed along the entire frontage of the property along West Ridgeway Avenue. And then also noting that we would like a 10-foot landscape parkway kind of between the sidewalk and the road to give you that buffer so the sidewalk's not right on top of the road. And then also include associated crosswalks and pedestrian signals that in order to allow pedestrians and bicycles to cross the road to get onto that trail on the north side of Ridgeway Avenue that takes you west. So those are the things that we're working on right now with the development agreement. But as far as the site plan, we would recommend approval of the site plan at this time.
Thank you. At this point, we'll ask the applicant, if they're present, if they'd like to address the commission. Please state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Chimento. I'm with Midland Atlantic. Our address is 8044 Montgomery Road, Cincinnati, Ohio 45236. I appreciate the opportunity to be here again tonight. We appreciate your time. We appreciate staff's time. We've still continued to have a great relationship with the staff. We haven't always agreed, but I think the product that we're coming up with is a great product for the gateway, which we believe this is in the community. This is a gateway development. We have incorporated your comments, I believe, from the last meeting, upgrades to the convenience store right at the corner. Hopefully you're pleased with the changes that we've made. We recognize how important this project is. We would like it to be nicer than what we've done with the Target Center down the street. That's why we've over-landscaped it, greatly over-landscaped it, as you saw. And we're happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else present who'd like to speak to this item? Commission, discussion, or questions?
I guess my questions are a little bit more on the roadway and the sidewalk, since that's still quite up in the air, it seems like at this point. Would you still feel we should approve it, though? I mean, the site plan itself, I think, is fine, but that connection there, I'm just trying to read all the street report stuff and make sense of it. It sounds like there's still some concern that long-term we're going to have issues in that area with backup and things like that. Maybe not immediately, but down the road as things continue to fill in, and just how that gets addressed and things like that.
Yeah, we want to note that the city engineer is here tonight. John's here, and he can answer any specific questions you have about his memo, about the traffic study, if you want to dig into any of the details. But I think what we want to make sure that we're talking about here is we have a site plan application here, and so what we're trying to determine that what improvements are needed to the roadway to support the development of this property at full build-out. And so that's why we focused in on the traffic study and those elements of the roadway that we feel like the developer should be responsible for to support the development of this property. And of course, there's going to be additional development in the corridor that's going to contribute to this. And far in the future, there's some indication that it is going to get congested here. But we feel like that as long as so these improvements that are identified, that are being caused specifically as much as we can determine with the traffic study caused directly by the development of this property and the anticipated increase in traffic from at full build out, we feel like this is our best effort to address those things at this time.
Yeah, I guess maybe if you just talk about what that potential future might be, because it sounded like there's concern that long-term that Nordic Drive access point, there could be an issue with traffic backup, blocking that, crossing that, and how that all works. Just because we're going to grant the access now, and then in the future, how does that get dealt with?
Sure, I would be happy to try to address some of these concerns. So this is kind of a difficult situation. It's not ideal by any means. Nordic Drive is in place. Unfortunately, it is closer to 58 than we would like to see. So really, with the current circumstances, we don't have the option to pick Nordic up and move it down the road, move it farther away from 58. So we've looked at several scenarios, how we can make this work long-term and keep it as trouble-free as possible. So we've gone back and forth with the developer on their traffic study quite a bit and feel like we've landed on a solid solution. Will it be, is it 100% perfect? Will it never have problems? I think the answer to that is likely no, but everybody needs a crystal ball to determine when will those problems develop. We feel that it is quite a ways out into the future, and we feel like those problems can be dealt with at that time, that this will work for a significant amount of time. So really what we're seeing needed more immediately with the development of the actual Fleet Farm store and the convenience store is the roundabout at Drive 1 and then a traffic signal at Drive 2. And that traffic signal we anticipate would be a temporary signal initially, and then the city would look at kind of piggybacking on this, doing some initial work either in 2020 or 2021, where we widen and add turn lanes to that area between 58 and Nordic. And then in 2022, the DOT has plans to make improvements on 58. And that would all kind of work together to solve a lot of these problems long-term. And so we've gone back and forth saying that, we really feel that dual left turn lanes are needed to get onto 58 and to get into Site Drive 2. We feel a right turn lane is needed to get onto 58, and a right turn lane was potentially needed to go onto Nordic. There's agreement there with the developer to do that, and with the city to work together to make all this happen over a number of years. So it's, we do feel confident that it will work for a long time. Again, it's all really dependent on the rate of development, what happens in this corridor. And the other difficulty is, when the DOT has an interchange concept for this area, and when they finally do that, there is an overpass situation planned for Ridgeway, and that could change the traffic pattern considerably to a point where there may be no problems, and this may be the final solution. So it's difficult. We feel we have looked at a rather long-term window of 20 years and feel it will work well for 20 years, but it really depends on the rate of development. So we just kind of feel at this point this is a good compromise with several solutions we've looked at. We've considered putting a median across Drive 2 and not allowing that. Some of the roundabout analysis shows you would then have a heavy U-turn movement in that roundabout, and long-term the roundabout starts to break down. So we feel right now leaving that access open is really probably the best option. So that's how we'd kind of like to proceed. So I guess in summary, we've gone back and forth quite a bit about options and feel what we're showing here will work for a long time. I would imagine when it's fully built out, the corridor has seen significant growth. There will be some challenges, but we feel they can be worked out at that time. And those challenges may not really develop depending on what happens with the DOT's interchange concept.
So what I'm hearing you say is the plan now is, as you work out the details here, is to have that Nordic Drive intersection signalized immediately then as part of this development?
Yes,
then?
that's correct.
Okay. And that, I guess, Quick Star and some of the other folks across the road, then they're all aware of this and are on board with what you're talking about.
Yeah, we did have the public meeting and informed all the neighboring property owners. I think we've received a little bit of correspondence, and I think in general, I think they're pleased that we're going to keep that intersection open, and the idea that it's signalized so that we're trying to serve all the needs in the corridor. I think the retail store here and the gas station are going to generate quite a bit of traffic, so that access point, both to Nordic, going north to the businesses and into the site, it's going to be necessary to have a signal at that intersection from day one. Whether it's a temporary type signal and the full build-out is done later.
Right.
What's the approach if we do start to see backup on a 58? Just the signal timing?
Well, could you repeat that one more time?
What's the approach if we do start to see backup? I might share the same concern that Marty has.
What's the approach if we would evaluate signal timings. We really have a good plan in place to really happen over the next few years as this develops and then as the DOT does their project and we make improvements. I really think in the near term, opening day, I really don't think you'll see too many problems with just the Mills store and the convenience store. And then as that area develops and other areas develop and traffic continues to rise with what the city would plan over the next couple of years and then with the DOT's project, I really don't think you would see significant problems on 58 or Ridgeway for quite some time. It would, with the turn lanes, the DOT has plans to add dual northbound left turn lanes, I believe a southbound right turn lane. So some of the the improvements that they're planning as well will really kind of mesh well with our plan. So I don't think in the near term you would see significant problems at all.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I would make a motion to approve.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please go ahead and vote, brother. And you have all ayes on that one, so that is approved as well. We'll move on to city council. And thank you to both the applicant and to city staff for the continued effort put into this one and the coordination. That concludes our items of old business. If there are any commission updates.
I do have one. Just want to let you know, a little heads up, the city is installing new agenda management software. We haven't tested it out yet. I was asked to inform you, so when you receive your packets of information, perhaps even at your next meeting, there'll be a new system in place for you to upload the packet, but you'll be receiving information probably by email from our IT staff about the steps to do that and the changes that will come. Our system is pretty outdated from what I understand, and so it's just getting to the point where we need to do something different. So anyway, I just want to give you a heads up, so when you see it coming, your email coming through, and if you have any trouble, I'm sure there'll be a contact that you can contact to address any problems you're having.
So they're changing it just if they got mine fixed, right?
That's right.
Thanks for making that happen. Any other items? All right, entertain a motion for adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor of adjournment signify with aye.
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 Opposed, nay? Thank you.